Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Mysteries and Disappearances video. While I'm waiting for your new suggestions to do this playlist, I thought I would mix this one in here. This is just totally a random one that I found on a little playlist, a little checklist of sort that showcases disappearances before 1970. I like looking at the older ones because it's almost like lost in time type stuff. The idea that these people were living, but then at one point just flat out disappeared, never to be seen again. And then because of the time period involved, in some cases over 100 years since their disappearance, they are forever lost in time. So this set of videos are almost like a way to share at least one last look into their life. And who knows, maybe there may be some more information coming soon. But this one has to do with that. It was a gentleman, an attorney who lived there in Los Angeles later on in his life. And then at a certain point in the late 1800s, he just up and disappeared. One last person saw him waiting for a streetcar, and then he was never ever seen again. I was originally going to pass on this one, but it was that last remark along with one other little note associated with his disappearance that made me go ahead and just want to share it here. But it has to do with this guy. There's actually not even a picture of him. This is how old this case is. But I thought I would just share a generic picture. But in this case, it was an attorney by the name of Frank H. Howard. So let's go ahead and let's share his information here. And then who knows, maybe 100 plus years later, there may be some new info that I'll follow up on afterward. So here's what happened. Frank H. Howard was someone that was an American attorney who was actually born here in America. There's so little information, though, about his early life that there's not even an indication of where he was. Presumably, it would have been in the state of Texas because apparently when he grew up at a certain point in his early age, he was for the son of a guy named Volney E. Howard, who was the Attorney General, the very first one for the state of Texas back in 1836. So going by that notion, there's a good chance that he was born either in that time, just a couple of years in and around that time, and it would have been in the state of Texas. Afterward, he graduated from a university called Heidelberg University, originally with a medical degree, but then afterward took up law lessons to become an attorney, and he had a noted characteristic. He was considered trained and very cultured in classical languages. So in other words, he knew French, he knew German, he knew Spanish, and of course English as well. It goes to show that somebody like that was able to take all those dialects and learn them shows the kind of mind that he had, and he was an attorney as well. So he was definitely up there when it came to his intellects. Somewhere around the way, though, like in 1865 or maybe a little bit before that, he must have moved from Texas because at that point he settled in Los Angeles and then continued to pretty much stay there pretty much until his disappearance. So later on, after continuing to be an attorney, he was later in the Los Angeles County Board of Education as president of them. This would have been in 1886. And then afterward, a couple of years later, he was a candidate for the Superior Court judge position there in Los Angeles. He would have been a Democratic position there. I don't know if he actually was able to become a judge because it said that he was just a candidate, but who knows, he might have won it or he might have at least not had it just for that time. But otherwise, in 1891, he then became appointed to a new Los Angeles city charter at the time, and this was mainly because of this. There was a lawsuit that was brought against him, and this was with regards to some judge, Superior Court Judge Shaw, who stated that anything involving some defendants that were associated with the board, they would have to maintain or resume their positions as the quote-unquote legal and duly authorized officers of the library. It gives you the impression that maybe he was someone that wanted to stay or wanted to get out of the library board, but it was told that no, whatever the decision was by the judge, if a newcomer came in, they could not take over any of those defendants. It's a little confusing, but that's at least one lawsuit that he was involved in. There was another more major one. This is one that actually stood out, probably the biggest one in his life, and it had to do with this. As an attorney, he was there representing a woman by the name of Tessa Kelso. She was a city librarian. She had sued a minister, a Methodist minister by the name of J.W. Campbell. And the reason for this is because apparently that minister had slandered her during a prayer. This would have been something happening on his pulpit, and this was a situation where in front of a lot of people, this is exactly what he said. "O Lord, vouchsafe thy saving grace to the librarian of the Los Angeles City Library and cleanse her of all sin and make her a woman worthy of her office." That's what he said. That's essentially what he said in front of all those people. The reason for this was because Tessa Kelso had purchased some French language books that were considered obscene. Probably obscene at the time. Who knows if they are now. But that was something that caught the attention of that minister, and he did not like that. And so he essentially gave that statement in front of everybody, presumably in front of her too. And she in turn considered that slander. This was a notable case because this was the first time where a statement was challenged. It was challenged in a sense that it could be protected or it could not be protected, almost like free speech, mainly because it was considered, at least according to the minister, it was part of a prayer. They went by that angle. They stated that they were privileged in saying that information because it was part of something that the minister does on a regular basis involving prayers. And so can you believe that? It went to court. In fact, it was in 1895 that a Superior Court judge ruled that no, those statements were not privileged, that indeed it was slander, and that it was essentially, like in other words, the notion that the lady, the librarian Tessa Kelso, was damaged was true. So it made it seem like the case actually ended up being won by that librarian and by Mr. Howard. And so that was one of the most notable ones associated with that his case with regards to the cases that he had there. This was, though, a short-lived victory. This happened again in April 1895 because in August of 1896, just a little bit like a year later or so, that was the last time that he was seen. The way it goes is this. He lived at a location called 1043 South Hill Street. He was leaving his house at that time, telling his family that he was going to go on a business trip. This would have taken in someplace in San Bernardino, somewhere out there in the desert. He was there apparently with a friend, like either her friend had stayed over or had met him that morning. I don't even know actually if it was morning, but we're guessing in this case that's the most likely thing. And he was seen by that friend, and then afterward that friend left him just standing there on a street corner as he was waiting for a streetcar. And that was it. That was the last of anybody ever saw of Frank H. Howard. Wherever he went to after that, anything involving that information, he is gone. Like nobody was able to see him again. Maybe he got on a streetcar. Maybe other people picked him up. Maybe he decided to go somewhere else and something happened to him. There's no clue at all. It's like the earth just basically swallowed him up right then and there. These are the cases that fascinate me. These are the ones that get me the most because the idea that somebody is there one moment and then they're just gone like that. And this is in plain daylight. This is a situation where it's not isolated, where it was in front of his friend, in front of his house. That would have to, you expect to be a neighborhood, right? Because there's a streetcar there and so on. That was the last that anybody ever saw of him. And then afterward, there was a body that was found in an area called Mount Wilson. The next month, there was some hope that that was his, at least to give some closure. But no, it turns out that was not. But again, he just outright disappeared. Freaky stuff when you think about that, because he woke up that morning, again, to go on a business trip. Little did he know that that was essentially the last time he would be there. Anybody would see him. And then only other notes, and again, one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about it in this video was It was only about 3 years later that some association was done, the Bar Association, a meeting, and this was where they would do like a committee and go over some notes, I guess some type of checklist. And in it, one of those just frankly stated, and this was signed off by several members, 3 of them in fact, stated that Mr. Howard is not now a resident of the state. 3 years later, they must have realized that, yes, absolutely, he's gone. He's not coming back. Who knows where he went? He didn't tell anybody. Who knows if it was something peaceful, if it was something nefarious? Who knows? But that's essentially the disappearance associated with Frank H. Howard, an attorney, somebody that was born there in the state of Texas, moved to California, a linguist who knew at least several different languages, became part of the County Board of Education there in Los Angeles, tried to become a Superior Court judge, was involved in that very prominent lawsuit involving slander versus prayer, and then he disappeared. Interesting stuff. But if anybody has any more info, it's a long shot considering how old this is. His disappearance is more than 100 years old. Then please post those comments below. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.